My son-in-law thought a big house gave him the right to humiliate me. In front of 40 guests at his housewarming party, he raised his glass, pointed at me across the room and said, "Everyone, meet my father-in-law. He's the dead weight that comes with the wife." The whole room laughed nervously. My daughter went pale and said nothing. I set down my drink, straightened my jacket, walked up to him and said 3 quiet words. His smile froze on his face. He had no idea that within 24 hours, the beautiful new house he was showing off would stop being his. Because it never was. My name is Harold, and I am 65 years old. For most of my life I believed that quiet work beats loud money. My late wife and I started with nothing. I drove a delivery truck for 31 years. She worked as a nurse. Every spare dollar we earned went into one thing: small rental properties. One little house became 2. 2 became 5. By the time she passed away, we owned 9 properties, all paid off, all managed quietly under a small family company with my name on it. I never wore designer clothes. I never drove a new car. People looked at me and saw a simple, retired truck driver. That was fine with me. I had learned long ago that the most powerful person in the room is usually the one nobody bothers to impress. My daughter Chloe is my only child, and she is my whole heart. 3 years ago, she married Blake. Blake sold luxury cars and talked like every sentence was a commercial. Big watch, bright teeth, loud laugh. He was charming, the dangerous kind of charming, the kind that performs kindness instead of practicing it. From the first dinner, I noticed how he spoke to waiters. I noticed how he spoke about his own father. And I noticed how his eyes slid past me like I was furniture. But Chloe loved him, so I welcomed him, and I kept my observations to myself. 2 years ago, they needed a home. Blake's flashy income was mostly commission big months, empty months, and no bank would give him the mortgage he wanted for the house he had to have. So, I did what fathers do. I bought the house. Not loaned. Bought, cash, through my family company. The way I had bought every property for 30 years, the deed sat in my company's name. The agreement was simple and legal and signed by both of them. They would live there, pay a small monthly amount that mostly covered taxes and insurance, and one day, when they were steady, I would transfer it to my daughter. It was meant to be her safety, not his trophy. Blake never told anyone that part. Within a month, he was posting photos of my new estate. Within a year, the story at every party was how he had built all this by 34. I said nothing. Let a man have his pride, I thought. Pride is free. But somewhere along the way, Blake stopped seeing me as the quiet man who had handed his family a home and started seeing me as the embarrassing old man who didn't match his decor. Then came the housewarming party. Yes, 2 years after moving in. Blake called it a relaunch after his big renovation, an excuse to show the house to his new business friends. Chloe begged me to come. I wore a simple dark suit and brought a homemade apple cake, my late wife's recipe. Blake met me at the door, looked at the cake like it was a dead animal, and handed it to a caterer. "Dad, we have people for food now," he said, loud enough for others to hear. Dinner was one long performance. Blake walked his guests from room to room, saying, "I built this and I chose this marble, and this is what happens when you refuse to think small." Then, during the toast, a guest politely asked how a car salesman affords a house like this. The room went quiet. Blake's jaw tightened. And that is when he chose to sacrifice me to save his image. He laughed, pointed his glass at me, and said it. Well, it definitely wasn't with help from his side. "Everyone, meet my father-in-law, the dead weight that comes with the wife. He thinks a homemade cake is a housewarming gift." People laughed the way people laugh when they're uncomfortable. Chloe whispered, "Blake, stop." He didn't stop. He looked at me and added, "Don't worry, there's a bus stop right outside. You'll be fine getting home." I stood up slowly. I walked over to him. The room watched. And I said 3 words, quietly, so only the people closest could hear. "Check the deed." He blinked. "What?" I smiled the way you smile at a child who hasn't done his homework. "The deed to this house, Blake. Check whose name is on it. Enjoy your party." And I walked out, past the marble he chose, through the door I paid for, and drove home. He thought I was a confused old man. That was his biggest mistake. The next morning, at exactly 9 o'clock, I called my lawyer, the same calm man who has handled my properties for 20 years. I did not scream. I did not plot anything cruel. I simply stopped pretending. By 10:30, a formal letter was prepared. The informal family arrangement was over. Since the resident had publicly declared the property owner unwelcome, my company was converting the arrangement into a standard lease market rent, standard terms, effective next month offered, at my instruction, to my daughter's name only. At 11, my lawyer confirmed something I had almost forgotten. The personal guarantee I had signed a year earlier, backing the loan for Blake's dealership expansion, was still sitting there, my guarantee, my choice. I withdrew it, exactly as the agreement allowed. What the bank would do next was between Blake and his own numbers. At 2:40 that afternoon, my phone rang. Blake, I let it ring. At 3:15, Blake again. At 3:22, a text, "This is insane. You can't do this." At 4:05, Chloe called, crying but not about the letter. "Dad," she said, "I just found out the renovation, the cars, the party, it's all loans. He told everyone the house was his. He told ME things were fine. What else has he lied about?" And that, right there, was the question that ended her marriage. Not my letter. His lies. Because once a person starts pulling one loose thread, they rarely stop at the first one. By the weekend, the bank had asked Blake for new security on his expansion loan. He didn't have any. Everything he owned was leased, financed, or mine. His business partners heard the whispers. Deals cooled. And on Sunday evening, Blake stood at my front door. No big watch. No loud laugh. Just a man discovering the difference between an image and a foundation. "Please," he said. I made a mistake. It was just a joke. I looked at him for a long moment. "Do you know what destroyed you, Blake? It wasn't 3 words. It was 2 years of believing that the person who gave you everything owed you his silence too. I did not throw my daughter out of that house. I would sooner burn my own hands. The lease was written in Chloe's name, at a rent she could manage on her own salary, because the house had always, truly, been meant for her. Blake moved out within the month. The divorce was quiet and, thanks to his own paper trail, very short. Last I heard, he sells cars again at a different lot, where nobody has seen the marble he chose. Months later, at a small family dinner in that same house, just Chloe. The apple cake I baked from her mother's recipe. And me, she asked how I stayed so calm while he humiliated me in front of everyone. I told her the truth. Because real ownership never needs to raise its voice. The loudest man in the room is usually renting everything, including the room. Never mistake a quiet old man for a powerless one. Some of us simply see no reason to shout from a foundation we already own. Respect costs nothing. But disrespecting the wrong quiet man can cost you the very floor you're standing on.